Helena, how are you? Welcome back to Forked.
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so glad to be here because there is so much going on and plenty for us to talk about. So why don't we just dive in?
Always. Never a dull moment.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm going to do some business before we start. So, as you know, and maybe the audience doesn't know, Forked is a production of the Food and Environment Reporting Network, and FERN, which is for Food and Environment Reporting Network, is a nonprofit independent news organization, and we do lots of journalism beyond just this here podcast. And you should go to our website, www.thefern.org, and check it out because we have all kinds of good stuff there. And we'd love you to come and read our stuff and listen to our stuff and watch our stuff and maybe even make a donation. Who knows? And for you, Helena, I always talk about this in the introduction, but tell us a little bit about this Food Fix newsletter you do.
Yeah, if anyone's not on the list, you can go to foodfix.co and get the Food Fix newsletter. It's all about food policy. You can get it for free every Friday. And then if you work in food and you want more, you can upgrade to get it twice a week. Everyone loves it, and you should go read it.
It's good stuff. I'm giving my testimonial here for free. Anyway, so see, I was so excited about what's happening in the food world that I was going to jump in without actually singing for my supper first. So I caught myself. So let's get started. The first thing we do on every episode of Forked is we do something called the double take. Now that is something that is happening in the food world that is so sort of shocking or weird or difficult that it just makes you kind of do a double take. And in this case, I think we should talk about the Trump administration's new executive order on the promotion of elemental phosphorus, which is a great phrase. We'd have to go talk a lot about what that means, but really it's also about the production of glyphosate. And glyphosate is the primary active ingredient in the weed killer Roundup. Helena, what do the MAHA folks think about this? Are they thrilled at this new executive order?
Yeah, this executive order posted, and within minutes, we had a very public meltdown on primarily on X. I'm sure it was also unfolding on other social platforms, but I think
Homeschools
Zen.
around the country were freaking out, right?
Well, I don't think they're on X. That's a slower roll
Yeah.
for it to reach the homeschool crowd for
Right.
sure.
Okay.
But you know, the activists who are very engaged online, Zen Honeycutt from Moms Across America, Kelly Ryerson from American Regeneration, were furious. Like I think Zen actually used the term. I think she said something like, "I'm sick. Like I'm physically sick from seeing this." They viewed this as basically the Trump administration choosing Bayer over them. That's what they did. And
I mean,
you
it's
know,
true, isn't it? I mean, let's just back up a little bit and
yeah.
let's talk about a good old RFK Jr., Secretary of Health and Human Services, who before he was in the government and before he ran for president as a Democrat, sued Monsanto, which is
Mhm.
now Bayer, which is the company that produces glyphosate.
Bayer bought Monsanto.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yes. And he won, or he was part of the legal team that won a
Yeah.
case against Monsanto for
It was a
glyphosate,
seminal case. Yep.
and he's called it poison. And in fact, he's called it poison recently. I think
He still calls it
he still
poison.
calls
Yeah.
it
And
poison.
he said recently he believes it causes cancer. Juries have awarded billions.
Our
Uh
friends in Europe think it's causing cancer or probably causes cancer, but our industrial overlords here in the United States do not think it is causing cancer.
Our regulatory agencies here in the US have long maintained that glyphosate is not carcinogenic and presents no public health risk when used according to the label. That is the official stance. I, you know, basically what the Trump administration is arguing here is that it's a national security risk to be so heavily reliant on imports to make glyphosate to source glyphosate. Okay, so we are heavily reliant on imports, primarily China, and so they're making the argument that look, we have to start onshoring more of this. We have to prioritize domestic production because if we lost access to glyphosate, whether it was a foreign actor or liability risk, that that's also going on. All of these lawsuits, Bayer is facing a torrent of lawsuits, so much liability, billions and billions in payouts. If we lost access to this, it would be catastrophic, which I think is true. I
It's
think that's true.
true under the current way that we produce food at scale in this
Yes,
country, which is
it
also
is. It
anathema
is
to
like
these MAHA folks, right? They hate.
yes, yeah, yep, yeah. So in a lot of ways, glyphosate is like the symbol, right? It is the the foundation of our current agricultural system in a lot of ways. And so MAHA hates it, wants to at the very least see it more limited in how it is used in agriculture. They particularly hate desiccation, which is when glyphosate's used at the very end of the crop cycle to help dry it out and speed up the process. And so that's sprayed on like right before harvest. They really hate that. They would like to see EPA straight up ban that. And I think Vani Hari talked about that
Yeah.
when we had her on, that like maybe that would be a middle ground because it makes up such a small amount of the overall volume of glyphosate usage, but it does make up a disproportionate it makes up a disproportionate contribution to human exposure, which
Yeah.
makes sense because if it's being sprayed at the end. So but that is not what is happening. We are not seeing any movement on limiting glyphosate. We are seeing the administration really throw down this. I mean, they're invoking the Defense Production Act, which is like a wartime. I mean, that's meant for wartime. We saw DPA invoked during the pandemic to
Well,
keep meat plants open, and that was like this huge deal. Like, holy shit, we're using
well,
like
that's where the elemental
wartime powers. So
But that's where
yeah, and
the
I
elemental
don't know as much
phosphorus
about
comes into play.
elemental phosphorus.
But
I don't know.
so elemental phosphorus is part of this. It is
Yeah,
used to make glyphosate,
yeah.
and elemental phosphorus. If you read the
But
executive,
also for a whole bunch of other stuff.
absolutely, but it is also a key input. This is from the executive order in smoke, illumination, and incendiary devices, and it's also a critical component for manufacturing semiconductors, batteries, all kinds of good stuff. But it is effectively the pesticides that we use in this country. They come from fossil fuels. They are made through a process that creates ammonia, and that ammonia is then used to create the pesticides that we now build our country around. So yes, the national security part of it does relate to weapons, but it also just really relates to the way we've organized our commodity growing of crops. So the big three: corn, wheat, and soybean. Those are
So
part of our. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
so wheat actually doesn't use glyphosate except for sometimes at the end, some portion.
Right.
But I think the most common it's almost exclusively all the corn and all the soy, and then I think it's heavily used in cotton as well. But
Right.
it's also just used as a weed killer in so many
Right.
so many agricultural applications.
But the point I
It
wanted to
can be
make.
found in
Yeah,
wheat,
yeah,
but I just want to make that
yeah.
clear that there isn't actually Roundup Ready wheat.
Fair
It's a
enough.
common, yeah.
The point I was making though is that the mass production of those three crops at scale is part of the United States national security. We consider the growing of food part of the casting of our soft power around the world. It's part of our competition with China. It's part of our
Yes.
competition with the Soviet, with the Russians. All of those things. It is in fact and has long been part of national security in the United States. The difference is that the MAHA movement coming to power with RFK Jr. was supposed to change that, right? And the way the connections to other parts of the MAHA movement are very strange, because if you think about, yes, glyphosate is used to grow all these crops. It's also, those crops are heavily subsidized by the government, and what do they become? They become a lot of things, but one of the things they become is high fructose corn syrup that goes into all those ultra processed foods that supposedly RFK Jr. is going to ban and put into the dustbin of history. So it is a symbol by promoting Roundup or glyphosate, but it's also a direct attack on the things that MAHA was put into power to do, right?
Yeah, I think it really gets back to this like divide we often see where the current administration loves talking about MAHA if they can bash big food.
Yeah.
They can bash food companies, they can bash soda, they can bash, synthetic food dyes, but nothing on the ag side,
No.
right? They do not. And I mean that inside the administration.
Yeah.
MAHA leaders outside the administration are coming hard. They're like, we want regenerative ag. We want to completely reform the system. They want to revolutionize how food is grown in this country. They're very open about this. But the Trump administration itself, like you do not see Brooke Rollins talking about the need to like fundamentally overhaul food production in the US. She may eventually start saying that. I don't know, but we are not there right now. And certainly we don't see Lee Zeldin, who's like off in his own world and like is in no way, he's like banished from the Maha Island at this point. So, there's just a clear divide. They
Yeah.
don't they don't seem willing to take on agriculture, even when, okay, so we should also mention Kennedy defended this executive order, and MAHA lost it even more after that. They were like, it was one of the MAHA supporters tweeted something like, Bobby, blink twice if you're being held against your will, which was like, that's how a lot of them felt. They were like, are you serious? Like, we thought you would come on. And, on Joe Rogan over the weekend, he did offer, I think, a more nuanced explanation where he basically said, and yes, I did listen to all 2.5 hours. So,
I've
you're welcome, but you're welcome.
No,
So
thank you. I appreciate that.
he,
Better you than
he,
me.
he explained that, like, he believes glyphosate causes cancer. He said that very clearly. He believes we are basically addicted to a toxic system and that we have to figure out how to get off of it. And what they are now doing, the administration, is they're announcing money at NIH, of all places, to study, I guess, like cumulative chemical exposure. And then also they're trying to use ARPA-H, which is like, I think partly NIH, maybe partly defense, like DARPA.
Yep.
It's like the DARPA model. ARPA-H, though, is for health. Okay, so just to clarify that. And they're trying to, I think they're putting in like 200 million or pledging 200 million. We'll see. I got to track if this money actually happens, where it goes, all that. But they're saying they want to study basically like, or they want to incentivize people to figure out like how we get off of these, using certain chemicals for inputs. And so far, I have not seen anything from USDA on this. I've not seen anything from ag groups on this. So it feels like the HHS folks are trying to like lean in and say we're real, like the administration is like all on board for transitioning off. But like, I'm not sure that that's the case. Like,
That's
we don't
definitely not
see
the
that from
case.
USDA. We don't see that from EPA. We don't see that from the ag group. So it's like,
But hold on, that
it's
is
the
yeah.
vibes getting way ahead of where the actual
But it's not
policy
even the vibes. It is blatantly, patently false to say that they're going to change the agricultural system in the country. They have done nothing to do it, and this is only the best evidence that they are absolutely not going to do that. Right? The question is, I think politically, how mad are people about it? Right? They it's very there's
Well,
all
I think this is where I think this is where a lot of the MAHA moms, are they really going to get information about the ag policy?
yeah.
I mean, it's really complicated, and like it sounds like they're doing things, right? Like the $700 million to regenerative agriculture, that's just repurposed money.
Yeah.
That's not new money. And so, they're giving them crumbs and basically saying, look, we're changing. And it's like, meanwhile, there's like tens of billions of dollars of subsidies going to like prop up the system we currently have. And so the MAHA activists understand this. They're like, we need, I think they're calling for somewhere between like 5 to 10 billion per year, or initially, to like actually try to incentivize some transition. That's a much different situation than what we have now. So
And
we'll
also
see. This isn't going away.
yeah.
This is going to test MAHA for many months.
Yeah.
Like this is not going away. I've actually seen a few folks on social that actually identify as ex-MAHA now over this. I don't think it's been a full-blown divorce, but this is really, really pushed
This is
a real divide within
a
MAHA.
bad date night. Nobody's talking to each other. It's not a divorce.
I'm calling it a marital spat.
That's right,
Yeah.
yes.
It's
Right.
in the open though, right?
Okay.
It's like a screaming match in front of everyone.
This is where the kids say, the mom says, you tell your father that
Yeah.
he should do this. He should clean up the garage before he says anything to me about the living room. Yeah, it's that kind of
Yeah.
thing. All right.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we move on? I will actually, before we move, I just want to read one. And I think when it gets at the potential for a transition to a regenerative agriculture system, what's happening, why RFK Jr. is forced into doing things that he absolutely doesn't want to do and has said he would never do. There's one line from the executive order that I think is key, right? And it's about glyphosate, and it says there is no direct one-for-one chemical alternative to glyphosate-based herbicides. And my understanding of that is that in the world that we live in today, and the world always changes, but in the world that we live in today, there is no real substitute in the United States for glyphosate, right? So
That's true.
Yeah. So
yeah, that's true. And Kennedy, again on the Joe Rogan podcast, really emphasized that they believe technology will eventually provide a substitute. There are some really interesting like attachments for agricultural equipment that can basically like zap the weeds like in real time. It's really cool to watch.
I've heard about
But
these.
these systems are like $1 million. So okay, yes, the largest of the large could maybe take that kind of investment. That's still a lot of money. But that's not a solution.
Not in the certainly
Uh
not in the near or medium
Not in the
term.
year or medium term.
Yeah.
Um, so, you know, we'll see. It's been interesting to me how much political kind of pushback there has been. This is new. Like, I think if Tom Vilsack had done something on glyphosate during the Biden administration, yeah, there would have been some gripes, but nothing like this. This, I think, shows that MAHA is really flexing its muscle in a way. They've been really successful at beating back some state policy. And now they're actually planning a rally at the Supreme Court when the oral arguments begin April 27th. I think it's called the People versus Poison or something like really stark. So we'll see how many people show up for that. I mean, I don't think this is going away. I don't know how the Trump administration like deals with this, especially going into the midterms because people are mad.
Maybe they'll
So,
start a war somewhere. Yeah. All right. So
oh yeah.
let's pass on to our next segment, which is the forks and knives, the main meal, the biggest thing happening in the
Mhm.
country right now. I'll say I don't know if this is the biggest thing happening in the United States with food policy right now, but it's important, and it is the testimony at the Senate of the nominee for the Surgeon General, Casey Means. So, what do you think about that? Why does that make any difference? Because the nation's doctor doesn't do all that much, but it is an important position.
Yeah, so I think Casey means if she's confirmed, which I think is likely, but we'll see. We haven't seen any recent indications one way or the other, but excuse me. So I think Casey means if she's confirmed is going to be a similar voice like RFK Jr., like big spokesperson against ultra processed foods. She even at one point, I pulled up a quote. She at one point told Bernie Sanders during the hearing that like basically he would be annoyed by how much she talked about processed foods. I think you'll be frustrated by how much I'll be talking about ultra processed food. She kind of said like tongue in cheek. And he was like, good, because Sanders agrees with her on food, which is, you know, kind of wild. He basically was like, "Yeah, I mostly agree with your food ideas," but like then he was like, "How about
How
vaccines?"
about those
She
vaccines? Yeah, she's not a
she
big fan of those.
so she repeatedly stayed above it. Was just like she would say, "I believe vaccines save lives. I believe they're part of a public health strategy," but she would not say like, "I would endorse giving babies the measles vaccine or anything." Like, I mean, anything specific, anytime anyone tried to pin her down on anything specific, she absolutely would not. She did say at another point, or which I thought was interesting, she said, um, anti-vaccine rhetoric has never been a part of my message. I don't mention the word vaccine in my book. This is not part of my core message. I am not here to complicate the message on vaccines. What I took away from this hearing is that she would focus largely on food as Surgeon General if she's confirmed. Um, it's just interesting. Like I
I
mean,
don't believe that, by the way. No, I don't believe that. Because if you look
oh,
it
I think look at what the RFK doesn't bring up vaccines unless asked even.
yeah, but he's doing plenty of things to undermine the
Oh,
use of
for
vaccines in
sure.
this
Oh,
country,
oh, for sure. But
and so would
she
she,
doesn't. Well, she doesn't have purview over that.
Yeah,
She doesn't have policy purview. She has a lot of messaging
yeah,
might. Right. This is a bully pulpit position.
right.
She said she like backed banning junk food ads on TV. So like she could absolutely put together a report that's like, here's why we should do this, and like it could be kind of it's almost like a think tank but with a lot of heft, right? Coming
Right.
from the federal government. So you can come up with ideas, you can promote narratives. It's actually like a very important position in its ability to drive a national conversation. I mean, there's many examples of that over time, but she wouldn't actually have like policy purview. But the Trump administration seems to be trying to talk about vaccines less, especially going into the midterms. It doesn't poll well. Um, I'm not saying her views on vaccines aren't relevant. They very much are, because if we face any sort of public health emergency, she would be one of the top spokespeople. So like, I understand why they were trying to press her on that. I'm just not sure it's enough to like not get her confirmed. So
I don't know if that's the case either, but I do think that she is even though she is quite capable of dodging a question, it doesn't make her something other than anti-vax. I mean, there's a nice little quote. She's being questioned by
Bill
Bill
Cassidy.
Cassidy, a Republican from Louisiana,
Mhm.
who's a doctor, and to the extent that that his partisan beliefs allow him, he is someone holding the line on vaccines, which is not that much. That line is not being held that much by somebody like him. But this is what he says. Do you believe that vaccines, whether individually or collectively, contribute to autism? And Dr. Casey Means replies, until we have a clear understanding of why kids are developing this at higher rates, I think we should not leave any stones unturned. I don't know what those stones would be, but we should not leave them unturned. And then Cassidy, there's been a lot of evidence showing that they're not implicated. Do you not accept that evidence? I do accept that evidence. I also think that science is never settled. That's a pretty bold brand of nonsense as far as I'm concerned. I don't know what that is supposed to mean. That to me means that if in position as the Surgeon General, she will publicly voice suspicions, distrust, opposition guardedly to vaccines in this country, and we shouldn't convince ourselves otherwise. That will be part of what she believes and will espouse publicly, to the extent that she is able to politically, which seems like less and less.
Yeah. No, I just don't think I think every signal I got from that conversation is that she will not be discussing vaccines, which I understand why that would make public health very nervous and very angry
Yeah.
because in a situation where like you're facing down flu season, you want the nation's doctor to be like, everyone should get the flu vaccine. That has been the message of public health every year for a long time. And I don't think they're going to get that from her. But I think it's more an omission
Mm-hmm.
than I didn't hear any indication that she would be out there like sowing distrust in vaccines. Though certainly that answer suggests like, well, we don't really know. And most people in public health would argue that we have so much evidence that vaccines are not linked to autism that they make stronger statements, right?
Yeah.
She wouldn't even say that she thought the flu vaccine, I can't remember exactly what she was asked, but it was something like, does the flu vaccine like reduce, adverse outcomes, or it was something very specific. And like for a doctor, I think would have been for most doctors would have been an easy answer. And she also sidestepped that one. So I viewed it as like, she's going to focus more on food and like holistic root cause health and just leave that to other people. I mean, you already see like a very weird, you see a very notable divide. Like Dr. Oz goes on TV and it's like, people need to get the measles vaccine. Like he says that. And then, RFK Jr. when asked is like, people need to talk to their doctor and make their own decision, do their own research. Like they do not have the same message. Like it is very different based on who you ask. And I think that's part of why infectious disease experts are so horrified, because they want to see the government have a unified, clear message so there's no confusion for consumers. We are already seeing vaccine hesitancy grow, although it is still deeply unpopular, even with Republicans, when you ask them in polls. So I don't know. I think if confirmed, we expect to focus on food. That's my understanding based on what I heard, but who knows?
Did I ever tell you my Dr. Oz story?
No. What's your Dr. Oz story?
So I
have one too. Yeah.
Maybe yours is better than mine, but I'll tell you mine first. So I used to work for a sports television show on HBO, and our office, we were a small show. We didn't last very long. And our office was in the same floor directly opposite the John Oliver show. Okay. So every time I would get into I walk out of the elevator, there to my left is the John Oliver folks, and to my right was my office. And that office that we were in was right before we came into it, the offices of Dr. Oz when he had his television show. He left that show to run unsuccessfully for the Senate. And apparently the Oliver people did not like that, because you'd walk out of the elevator and there was a big green, not ceramic, plastic fiberglass alligator, right? Looking at you, smiling and flipping you off. Right. That was the thing that you saw from John Oliver. It was all pointed at the then former, what used to be the Dr. Oz offices. They were flipping off Dr. Oz every day as you walked out of the oven. They never bothered to change it. They didn't think enough of our show to actually change that out, which I just thought was funny.
Oh my gosh.
What's your Dr. Oz story?
I went on the Dr. Oz show once.
Really?
To talk about an E. coli outbreak. And this was after he had been really taken to task by this, I think it was a Senate, there was a Senate hearing basically slapping him for promoting like all sorts of supplements and things that were unproven in a very certain way on TV, like being certain about outcomes and things that were, anyway, senators were very mad. He got really dragged in that hearing. So this was, I don't know, maybe a few years after that. And it was really interesting how scripted everything was. Like I got to choose what I said, which was basically just what is E. coli and like how, we've seen outbreaks. Where do they usually come from? I can't remember if it was Chipotle or some other whatever. And there was this, but I was so shocked at how they were very like it wasn't like you could just say whatever you wanted. And I think that was in response to that, right? Like they were trying to make sure no one said anything too wild.
I say. I mean, the shows I worked on didn't work like that. Guess if we had them,
no,
you could say whatever you wanted. But
yeah. I mean, I was not told what to say.
Yeah.
But it was like, here's what I'm gonna say, and I was not supposed to like differentiate at all, which I just have never been on any other show that does that. But I also never went on talk shows or anything like that. So
unfortunately, you were not flipped off by an alligator, which is good. I
don't think so.
Yeah.
I think it was before that.
Okay.
This was a long time ago.
Okay.
So
yeah. Let's get back to Casey Means for a second. One of the things that I think is pretty interesting about her in the context of what we're talking about with glyphosate is she is a big backer of regenerative ag, and she is very much opposed to the use of glyphosate. She has plenty of public statements on that. And it just, here's another thing about what happens with you when you work with the Trump administration. You never know which side you're going to have to be on in the future, right? How does somebody like her deal with that kind of thing? Obviously, she didn't take it down off her website. I just checked it this morning. Still all there.
Yeah, she got asked about this during the hearing. It's interesting. It didn't really get much. I'm trying to think if I actually pulled out this quote, but she says like basically the American system is like addicted to dangerous chemicals. I mean, she basically said that in the hearing, which I was shocked. I mean, before times, that would have been a disqualifying thing to say. Like the ag industry would have just put the kibosh on that. But I don't think that's true anymore. I think that's politically what MAHA wants, what like a significant portion of the Republican base now wants. You have to remember that, agriculture has outsized power in Washington, but there are actually, because agriculture is so efficient, there are actually very few farmers that produce the vast majority of our food. And so it's not like there's a ton of votes there, actually. So, she actually, I think, stayed pretty on her own message on glyphosate when she was asked about it in the hearing. But I wouldn't expect her to be talking about that as Surgeon General. I could be wrong. We'll see. And she may not get confirmed. We'll have to see.
If she does not get confirmed, then it would be interesting to understand the reasons why, right? So it seemed to me the most sort of public traction, and I don't know how much to value this, is the fact that she's not a licensed physician, right? She is a doctor. She
has a medical license. It's inactive.
But it's inactive. Well, we can quibble here, but does that mean if your license is inactive, are you licensed?
You can just. So this is something they really push back on. Yeah. She has a medical license. It's inactive. She could at any time reactivate it. I'm not sure why they didn't do that to just sort of like eliminate this talking point.
But if I have an
I don't know that this sways people. I just don't know if this sways people.
I don't think it matters. Like, I don't know why it makes
it sounds like a technicality. I mean, she went to Stanford Medical School and then did not complete her residency, but almost did, and at one of the top ENT like programs in the country. So, I mean, I don't know that this works. What I did hear, which was really interesting, was from Senator Collins, which again, there's this whole meme about her saying a lot of expressing concern and then voting with the Trump administration anyway.
That's not a meme. That is a fact. Yes. But okay.
Well, I would say this is the overall narrative that she has created for herself. The issue she brought up in the hearing was Casey Means' use of psychedelics and her promotion of them as in her book. She was basically like, these are illicit drugs. Like, would you be promoting illicit drugs? And Casey Means basically said, I think my views as a private citizen would obviously be different than she basically said, no, I will not promote illicit drug use as Surgeon General, which, I think that's the answer you have to give. I don't think she would, right? I think that's a fair thing. But
But
it
she
was
believes
interesting
in
that
it.
that
She
that
believes
that was
in the the
for
beneficial
sure.
aspect of it. So
A lot of this is a really growing issue on the right. Like, and also interestingly on the left, like I didn't read Michael Pollan's book.
but it's about the use of psychedelics, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of clinical research being done specifically around like depression and PTSD, and I do think there's something real there, but it's like under medical supervision.
Yeah.
Like some of these things I think will go through actual like FDA clearance. Um and probably the formal medical system will eventually adopt them, but right now it's in a place where like this is illegal in most places. And so that was what uh Senator Collins had issue with, but I don't know where she'll ultimately land.
What do you think? What do you know of or think about? Was there much coverage of her businesses, right? Like,
Yes, a lot.
because
There was a lot of focus
I
on
was
that.
looking at the website of her business, Levels, I can't remember which,
Levels.
Levels Health this morning, and for the life of me, I could not understand what it is. Right, so maybe you could tell me.
Yeah, Levels is a continuous glucose monitor thing that you put in your arm, and then there's an app, I think, that
That part I got,
tracks
but
it.
what's
So
the value of that? Why would I want to continually monitor my
so
glucose?
their argument is that you can learn how your body responds to certain foods
Okay,
and maybe be healthier from that. A lot of the mainstream medical professionals that I've heard from like talk
yeah,
about this, they just don't think this is useful for most people. I think if you have like pre-diabetes or diabetes, like that's maybe a different equation.
it,
But it's
the
expensive and they view it as like not particularly useful. Also, the tech, I think the CGM that they use is one that's like used for, people who have diabetes. It's not like something they invented. I think it's more the app and the maybe recommendations that come around it. There's also a bunch of other companies that do that. But really what the hearing focused on was not Levels. They
yeah.
focused on all of these other companies that Casey Means has promoted over the years without clearly identifying that she had a financial tie. This is super common, by the way, on social media. I'm not excusing not following FTC policy, but a lot of influencers do not follow FTC policy. And it's basically not enforced, which is
Well,
basically that you're supposed to put like hashtag ad or partner. You're supposed to very clearly indicate that you are going to financially benefit, or like if it's an affiliate code or whatever, affiliate link, whatever it is, if there is a financial relationship, you are supposed to clearly note that. And I think in the hearing, they noted that there were many instances where she did not clearly um,
right, but in a
disclose that.
in a broader sense, though, what's interesting about that, and I don't know that it's disqualifying, this is 2026, things are different than they used to be. This is handing the bully pulpit of the Surgeon General, the old Everett Coopership, however you want to call it, to an influencer. That's a first, right? I don't know that we
Oh yeah.
ever had somebody in that role. She would be a first for not being a practicing doctor. I think that is
Yep.
there was a
Yep.
brief period of time where a nurse held the position of the Surgeon General.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, that's what Wikipedia says. I don't know if it's true, but this would be the first.
Wikipedia is usually fairly accurate, but yeah,
I
it's
know,
interesting. Okay.
but it would be the first like full-time person in the role of Surgeon General who's not a practicing physician, and
Mhm.
it would definitely be an unusual thing to have a wellness influencer who has made her name and reputation and living by somewhat sketchy-ish, at the very least, somewhat untraditional means of selling stuff online. I don't know, like I don't know what to make of that. Again, should that be disqualifying? I'm not sure, but it's definitely
I
not
think in the
great.
I think in the past it would have been
Yeah,
disqualifying, to openly sell, like, imagine if it were pharma, like, if she
yeah,
were openly selling or promoting
yeah.
GLP-1s, I think you would have some populist pushback on that. But I do think we're in a new era where, in before times, doctors wouldn't have been on social media at all. Um, I think also there are other, constraints that doctors or practicing physicians are under for having alternate, like, sources of income. I'm not sure what those are, but there's probably more constraints there. Um, I think we are in just a totally new era, and I mean, if confirmed, she may kind of transform how people think about the Surgeon General. in good ways and in bad. I don't know. Like, I think it's so out of the realm of like what we've seen.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really know, but there's no question that it's
It would
just a
definitely
totally
be new.
different
All right.
situation.
So let's
Yeah.
let's leave it with the new world about to be ushered in. Normally, what we do at the end of the show, Helena, is a good vibe, something that we can take a note of hope about in the food, politics, and policy world. I think, though, and maybe you'll agree, that right now, when we're taping, the war against Iran is well underway, and I don't really have a good vibe. How about you?
Yeah, I'm fine to skip. I'm having flashbacks to my youth when we started other wars.
Yeah.
Like,
So I
really,
think,
that did not end
yeah.
well for us or for anyone. So,
So I think
yeah.
we'll leave the good vibe for the next time. Hopefully, we'll be able to come up with a good vibe in a couple more weeks. Until that time, it has been great chatting with you, Helena. I always enjoy it, and I will see you soon.
Yeah, see you soon.